Hello, welcome to Post Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and in my series on Palestine and Gaza, today I would like to address the responses that I've received on my online posts when I was advocating that Michigan voters should vote uncommitted so that we can send a message to President Biden and his administration, and on my general stance on what's happening in Gaza. Now, please keep in mind that these views were expressed on Threads, Twitter, and other social media by mostly my fellow liberals. We are used to receiving hate and hateful messages from the extreme right wing of American political spectrum. So I would like to address these things because people often offer arguments when you take a stance on Palestinian lives and on death and starvation of civilians and genocides that's happening right now in Gaza. So first and foremost, people point out, oh, if you criticize Biden, you are empowering Trump. And when Trump comes into power, and I'm just paraphrasing here, he would make sure and allow Israelis to even wipe out Palestinians. So, what is the option being given to me? That do not object to President Biden's policies, because if he loses, Trump will let the worst happen, which is a ludicrous argument, right? But okay. Another argument that comes from my liberal friends, of course, is that President Biden is not the president of Israel. He's the president of the United States. He doesn't make the decisions made by Netanyahu, right? Now, obviously, these people probably just read my name, which is Masood Raja, which is a Muslim name, and they assume that I am either too naive or too ill-informed to know how global politics works. If they were a little bit curious and less defensive, they would at least look me up. I know that Biden is not the president of Israel, but I also know that Biden has almost gotten approved $10 billion in aid to State of Israel. And that State of Israel is the largest recipient of US military aid every year. So basically what you're telling me is that the state to whose government you send billions of dollars, you have no influence over them, one. And two, 3 times in the UN Security Council, when a resolution was moved for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, who vetoed it? Netanyahu doesn't have the veto power there. United States vetoed it. That means President Biden's administration vetoed it. For that action, he alone is responsible. So don't give me this naive idea that somehow, since Israel is doing it, Mr. Biden has no responsibility. But that argument has been offered. Then there are ludicrous things that people say. When Trump comes, he will send you back where you came from. Enjoy the third world, as if third world is one country, right? But what is at stake here is amazing, that somehow to speak against death and starvation of children, there are people who want to justify that. One person argued that the entire population of Gaza is militarized, so there are no children, even though children are dying, right? So, and these are liberals who call themselves, people who care about people and life and everything else. So I realized, especially on threads, what is expected of me as a progressive person is to toe the party line. And if I don't toe the party line, I'm either on the side of the opponents or pro-Trump. In one case, when I posted my first openly critical post against the right-wing Israeli government and their actions, one person actually thought I was a Hamas sympathizer. Not thought, she expressed it, right? So simply because I spoke for the rights of Palestinian people, especially those who are being killed and massacred in Gaza, I had suddenly become a Hamas sympathizer. So what I'm learning, and I've always known it, those of us who work in post-colonial studies or on issues of social justice and equality, we already know this, right? That our liberal friends tolerate us only for as long as, we toe the party line and we don't cross certain lines. But increasingly in United States, it has become a perilous venture for scholars and public intellectuals to speak for the rights of Palestinian people. And what does that tell us? I mean, to me, it tells me that I need to amplify my voice. If it is making people uncomfortable, then I need to reach out to other scholars and other public intellectuals and journalists so that we can record in the present for future that when people of Palestine were being killed, maimed, and starved in an IDF-led genocide, we had the courage to speak against it, because being silent is actually being part of the oppression itself. That's how I think about it. So as this conflict, it's no longer a conflict, it's one massive military machine basically gunning down civilians and bombing buildings and destroying lives. When it ends, as a single individual, as a person who writes, I will spend rest of my life in pointing out the atrocities committed by the Israeli armed forces. I will write about the international treaties and international laws that they have violated in the past and they keep constantly violating. The situation is this: the United Nations, whose job it is to protect human lives, has issued dire warnings. And they keep saying people are under food insecurity. No, they are not under food insecurity. They are starving. There is a famine going on because the aid is either being not allowed or being slowed down. And you saw yesterday in the videos online, sometimes when the aid reaches, the expert Israeli Defense Forces conscripts opened fire, killing 100 people through a stampede. So this is where we, who care about human dignity and human life, we spoke up when Hamas committed their atrocities. I spoke up against it. Thousands upon thousands of others spoke up against it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we stay quiet when in retaliation and revenge the right-wing Israeli government unleashes its military might provided by United States to kill civilians, to destroy life in Gaza, and to restructure Gaza as a colony. Here, I would also like to thank people like Noam Chomsky, Bernie Sanders, people like Henry Giroux, Judith Butler, and thousands of other scholars from the West, the countries of South Africa and Ireland and Brazil, who have sent a clear message to the world, to United States and to Israel, that what's happening in Gaza is unacceptable. It needs to be called what it is, a genocide. And that what Israeli armed forces are doing, if you just go and read the UN Charter on Human Rights, most of their actions are against it. So are we supposed to accept that Israel perpetually exists in this state of exception, where they make the rules of engagement and rules of engagement accepted by all the other countries of the world do not apply? Is that the case? If that is, write it in the UN Charter. But personally, this entire series of events has made me question my own assumptions, my own way of speaking and writing. If you look at this playlist on Palestine, I started with my stated position that Israel has a right to exist and Palestine needs a right to self-determination. That was the premise from which I started. Now, obviously, to start there, you have to eliminate the history of Israeli aggression and appropriation of Palestinian lands. Now, after Gaza, I will spend a lot of my research, writing, and speaking energies on teasing out those histories, right? On pointing out openly, without fear of reprisals, as to how State of Israel, and now its right-wing pundits and right-wing politicians, how have they violated international human rights and constantly keep violating lives of Palestinian people? I think it's crucial for us to create that space where we can say that with proofs, with evidence, without delving into generalizations or essentializations, looking at things from the point of view of law and human rights and human dignity. Because if we stay quiet and do not have an eloquent, well thought out response to what is going on, the price in this instance would be the lives and futures of one people, Palestinians. But eventually it will continue. It will spring up elsewhere. Who will speak for people in the future if we do not speak for the Palestinian people in the present? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I know it's a perilous task to speak on this topic, to speak for the rights of Palestinian people. But personally, in my entire life, those of you who know me probably already know, I have never ever taken the easier path. I've always taken the path that to me, within my limited faculties, within my limited thought processes, is just. A path where my voice is always aligned with the oppressed, the wretched of the earth, people who are at the mercy of powerful forces. So my hope is that this war ends, that the Palestinian people survive it, and that somehow, maybe, Biden administration gets the message, if not from their conscience, because if they had decided based on their conscience, they would have already absolutely stopped this war Or maybe pragmatically they'll be forced to rethink their priorities. But until they do that, it's our job, me, you, people of Jewish Voice for Peace, the Jewish rabbis who have spoken against these atrocities, the politicians, the activists, the scholars, and the people in the street. We must relentlessly keep pointing out to what is happening so that the voices of Palestinian people are not erased or silenced. That's all. Thank you so much. Please take care of each other. Be kind and generous. And as always, from me to you, peace and love.